Jeremy Sager was earnestly trying to manage his sanity. He went to his therapist when it seemed right. He drank lots of gin or swallowed lots of pills when it seemed right. He went to a prostitute when it seemed right. He raged when it seemed right. Sager had finally settled into a career that seemed right. He managed to hold it together while at work and actually achieved promotions. He was elated when he was asked to represent the company as a featured speaker at a big regional conference. Dozens of his coworkers and colleagues from other companies would be there. Jeremy put in a couple of painstaking hours every night on his speech, hoping he would make a huge impression. Impressing people was certainly one way to boost his sanity. However, one day he was called in to talk to his boss. Once Jeremy saw his boss's face, he knew something was wrong and his blood pressure went up like an elevator. There had been several complaints against Sager by coworkers based on his manner of relating to them. His boss informed him that he was being significantly demoted, would have to go through relational awareness training, and would not be speaking at the conference. Jeremy Sager felt a 5-ton block of concrete on his chest. He felt a hammer slugging the left side of his brain and then the right side, back and forth. He felt a hand go down his throat and rip his heart out. His humiliation was overwhelming. Somehow he managed to control himself and respond appropriately to his boss, and then took a cab home, having enough presence of mind not to try and drive. Jeremy couldn't sleep that night but kept having recurring visions of jumping off cliffs. He called in sick the next day and finally managed to fall asleep. After waking, the visions of falling alternated with visions of being run over by a semi-truck. He wanted to die but wasn't ready to kill himself. Jeremy was desperately empty and lost. He indulged himself in those activities that had previously seemed to offer relief. As he did so, he had less desire to die, but became more and more angry at his boss, the company, and the whole industry. Sager began rehearsing all the things that he hated about other people at work, how the company ran things, his lack of salary and benefits, the women who were ugly, the horrible recorded music in the office, but especially the vileness of his boss and the despicable thing he had done in demoting him. Jeremy Sager was livid with anger, but the anger actually comforted him in a way. It gave him a sense of power and confidence. He enjoyed his anger. He was angry enough to hurt his boss. He was angry enough to hurt his coworkers. Jeremy never really had any qualms about hurting other people, as long as he could remember. It isn't that he had much of a history of deliberately hurting other people, he just rarely had a need to hurt others. When Sager was angry in the past, his need for self-preservation had kept him from hurting others. He was afraid of the consequences. He didn't want to get in trouble. But now was different. Now there was a feeling of confidence and power fueled by revenge that he had never experienced. His goal and sense of purpose was intoxicating. Jeremy Alston Sager knew what he had to do. It was clear, it was obvious, he had purpose, he had a plan, he had the power. 3 years previously, after a burglar had broken into his house, Jeremy purchased a Glock G17, featuring the safe action trigger system, a 114mm barrel length, and the optional floor plate, allowing him room for an additional 2 rounds. Sager now purchased 2 more Glocks identical to the first, providing him with 57 rounds of firepower. For good measure, he purchased 3 more magazines, doubling his capability. That would be sufficient to make a strong impression at the conference. With moderate Friday afternoon traffic, it took Sager 2.5 hours to drive east from his residence in Columbia, Missouri, to St. Louis. He checked in at the hotel and then registered at the conference. After the evening session, he went back to the hotel and slept well. In the morning, he listened to a keynote speaker and then went to a breakout session. Jeremy had lunch by himself and then showed up at the conference room where he would have been speaking. The room was quite large and was packed, filled with loud chatter and laughter. Sager noticed where his boss was sitting, as well as his coworkers and colleagues he knew from other companies. Sager walked quickly back to his car and placed his 2 Glock 17s in his Protec horizontal double shoulder holster and his third in an OWB Kydex waistband holster, all easily concealed underneath his button jacket. But Jeremy started having second thoughts, causing him to doubt his judgment. He had purchased 124 grain FMJ rounds, but now he was wondering if he should have gotten faster bullets. Perhaps the 115 grain Federal FMJs that travel at 1,180 feet per second, or even the Winchester JHP plus Ps that travel at 1,334 feet per second. That did make him pause for a minute, but then he told himself, "What I have is fast enough." The speaker who was assigned to replace Sager was just about to get up on the stage. Jeremy got within 5 feet of him, pulled his Glock from his left shoulder holster, and blasted it a hole in his chest. Before anyone realized what was going on, he quickly walked over to the table where his boss and co-workers were sitting, killing them all with 7 shots. Jeremy smiled deeply for the first time in months. Now, chaos was breaking out all over the conference room, with people shouting, screaming, and running for the exits or looking for a place to hide. Jeremy Sager felt powerful. He felt like he was 9 feet tall. Everyone was beneath him. He started moving about the room, shooting those closest to him, killing some and injuring others. Slowly and deliberately, he kept count as he went. 6 bodies, 7, 8, 9. The 3 exits were all on the front wall, making it difficult for people to flee. People turned over tables, attempting to set up cover. Sager continued counting. 13, 14, 15. Ben Dixon imagined scenes like this many times in the past, and he had therefore purchased a Browning Black Label 1911 .380. His heart raced as he reached for his gun, immediately regretting the fact that he hadn't done any target practice for a couple of years. His whole body shook violently as he tried to steady his hands, taking aim at Sager from 30 feet away. Sager continued. 19, 20, 21. Jared Chen worked out 5 days a week, was in excellent condition, and had trained extensively in Taekwondo. He had the opportunity to run out the door when the shooting started, but then realized he would have a clear probability of taking Sager down from behind. Just as Chen was about to tackle him, Dixon discharged his Browning, missing Sager but piercing Chan's skull, killing him instantly. His second shot missed and went into the wall. Jeremy continued firing, methodically killing and maiming people at will. 26, 27, 28. Dixon crouched behind a table to get off another shot. Juan Rodriguez, a former Marine, was also in a position to neutralize Sager and was about to strike him over the head with a chair when Dixon took a third shot at Sager, accidentally striking Rodriguez in the chest with a fatal round. Dixon took a 4th errant shot, splintering a table. Sager continued. 33, 34, 35. On the other side of the room was Deshaun Williams, who had his back turned when Sager started firing. He had moved to a corner and hid behind a table, pulling out his concealed Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 2.0. When he looked out, he did not see Sager shooting, but only Ben Dixon. Assuming him to be the bad guy, he began firing towards Dixon, and on the 3rd shot, he struck him in the head, quickly killing him. Jeremy, oblivious to Dixon and Williams, kept shooting. 39, 40, 41. Williams, now thoroughly confused, but realizing that Sager was still shooting people, stealthily moved to a more strategic place where he could get a shot at Sager. An off-duty security guard named Bud Furthold had been outside but near enough the convention room to hear gunfire. He just barely opened the door to see Williams shoot Dixon and then put 2 slugs into Sager, finally immobilizing him. Furthold, assuming Williams to be the perpetrator of all the violence, immediately drew his sidearm, a Ruger LCP, and began firing on Williams. Deshaun Williams, now even more confused, instinctively returned fire towards Furthold. Numerous calls had already gone out to the St. Louis Police Department, and 2 plainclothes officers were the first to arrive. Blake Decker carrying a Sig Sauer P226 MK25 and Tyler Higgs with a Beretta 92G entered through the northeast doorway with their service pistols drawn. Furthold had far more training and experience than Williams and was therefore able to mortally wound him, striking him in the neck with the round. Decker and Higgs arrived just in time to see Furthold gun down Williams, and believing him to be the shooter, they opened fire. Furthold managed to elude their shots and return fire, not realizing they were policemen. Just as 2 uniformed officers, Keith Gomez and Rich Saparsky, were entering the conference room, Decker and Higgs killed Furthold with a shower of 10 bullets. Radio communication had been poor among the police officers, and the uniformed officers did not realize plainclothes officers would be the first to arrive. Gomez, wielding a Beretta 92 FSM, and Saparsky, carrying a Sig Sauer P320 X5 Legion, reacted too rashly before Decker and Higgs even had a chance to identify themselves, gunning them down in a hail of 13 bullets. Now, more people were coming out from hiding, moving towards the doors. Many were still screaming in fear, while the injured groaned in pain. Saparsky and Gomez walked through the carnage, overwhelmed by what they saw. They soon recognized Decker and Higgs and erupted in agonized grief, with Gomez falling to his knees in convulsive sobbing. Sager had taken 2 bullets and lost much blood, fading in and out of consciousness. He lay just 12 feet to the right of and behind the officers. With one great final effort, he was able to move to his side, and with his 3rd Glock, he fired 4 rounds, murdering both Saparsky and Gomez before they could react. As Sager fired his handgun, 4 other policemen charged into the room to witness the death of their fellow officers, and each, armed with a Glock 19 Gen 5 FS, put 17 9mm parabellum slugs into Sager. A couple dozen officers began pouring into the room, and after a few minutes, paramedics were allowed to attend to the numerous wounded. The world mourned with St. Louis. The president flew to Missouri and met with the governor and mayor of St. Louis. Foreign leaders called in their sympathies. There were never more flowers in St. Louis than after the massacre. The loved ones of those who died were drawn to each other and received great comfort from each other. There were dozens of beautiful and touching memorial services. Though the grief seemed unbearable for many, healing was beginning to take place. According to Guns and Ammo magazine, the handgun of the year for 2018 is the Sig Sauer P365. The Sig Sauer P365 defies logic. It generally shares the dimensional profile of the smallest 9mm pistols that use either a 6 or 7 round single stack magazine. The P365 has a width of only 1 inch. With the 10 round flush fit or extended magazine inserted, the P365's 4.3 inch height is comparable to other micro pistols, and the optional 12 round magazine only adds a ½ inch. It is available at many stores near you, and you can even order it online today.